Hi, thanks for stopping by. My name is Nick,
I'm Karen.
and today, what are we talking about?
We're talking about conflict.
Oh, no, we're not.
Oh, yes, we are. And we're talking about how conflict can actually strengthen relationships and not weaken them. So we're talking about conflict. And conflict is just part of everyday life. You're never going to agree with everyone.
It's true.
You're never going to think you should all do the same things. And so we're going to explore a little bit about conflict, why sometimes we find it difficult to address conflict, perhaps what holds us back, and give you a technique to help you discuss a conflict. And this technique will give a better chance of actually having a positive resolution. Because I think a lot of times we are afraid to address conflict because we're worried about how it's going to end.
And also, what's the secret to a really great relationship? Conflict. We'll get into the why of that in a moment.
Yeah, well, I think we could. Well, first of all, if I just say that part of my job has always been about teaching adults and students about how to resolve conflict, because working in the field of emotional health and particularly in education, there's a lot of conflict, and we have to learn to express that in a productive way, so it's not going to end up in a sort of win-lose battle where people aren't going to talk to each other, or people lose their own dignity because they're rude or don't treat someone with respect. So let's delve into this. So I was thinking about my own approach to conflict, and it's radically changed really in the last decade. In previous relationships, not in sort of platonic relationships, but in romantic relationships, let's call them. I always found it really hard to express my needs and sort of challenge what people were saying. Maybe because I'd been brought up to, think it was wrong or impolite, or I think probably in romantic relationships, it was more of the fact that I might be abandoned. They might leave me because I've challenged something, which of course is a load of rubbish. And in the end of those relationships, I didn't feel authentic to myself because I was not addressing my needs.
And everything you're saying there absolutely chimes with me, because I fell into exactly the same trap with sort of previous relationships, and to the point there was no conflicts, certainly in one
Overt conflict.
Overt conflict in one of my biggest relationships, and that was actually a problem because all sorts of things were getting bottled up. I didn't even realise necessarily, but it's very, very important to get this stuff out and to talk about it.
And you also, I know, have talked about that in that relationship you felt that because you didn't raise things, that your boundaries were crossed.
Yeah, but it's a very sort of gradual process where you aren't, if you don't give voice to things which are actually causing you concern, those things can sort of eat away at you from the inside, and before you know it, it becomes a bigger and bigger thing that's not been. It's a bit like a dam wall holding this big floodwater back. Yeah. Eventually, at some point, that's going to give, and that's exactly what happened in my case. Yeah.
And I think with me, the dam didn't give. I just lost self-respect and confidence. And when that relationship ended, I was lucky enough to realise what I had done, my part in that ending. And I sort of wanted to find a partner, my next partner, to be someone who would tackle conflict head on in a respectful way and just not repeat the patterns of my past.
Yeah. I think that's the really important thing. You learn from these moments in life and you reflect on them. But we have got a very, very strong relationship like this, and we'll sort of talk about why it's so strong.
And I think that it's psychologically very healthy to address conflict, so you're not bottling it up. And I think when you resolve a conflict or talk it through, it actually builds a relationship. It makes it stronger.
Yeah, it does. It's sort of, I think we're so geared to avoid conflict sometimes that actually we miss the positives of being really honest, and sort of saying what bothers us and such like.
And I think because we've been practicing this for so long and being really sort of authentic to ourselves and respectful to each other, we conflict doesn't, even on the bigger things now, we know we will find a way through. Because one, our intention is we want to stay together, we want to find a peaceful way. And that was one of the things, particularly when bringing people together to mediate about two people who have had a difference in opinion and an argument, that both people have got to want to have that intention of wanting to solve the problem and get the relationship back to at least what it was before. And one of the techniques that I use with you is about giving you space sometimes, isn't it?
I've got... Interesting. I never used to have this, but it's with Karen actually. I sometimes have quite a short fuse, and and it's sort of partly because I've learned to look out for myself a bit more than perhaps I used to. But Karen's got a very good way of handling me. She literally just gives me the space to calm down. I know I'm being the clock when I've been like that, but just give me the moment to catch my breath. Count to 10, and then we have a proper sort of heart-to-heart about whatever it was. And the classic advice is never go to sleep on an argument. That's great advice,
and that works for us, doesn't
it?
It does. Yeah, luckily we've never had a disagreement too late at night where I've had to give him so much space and then we've had to sleep on it. So I wonder what your perception of conflict is. Do you find conflict stressful? I've also got a friend who loves conflict. Do you avoid it? Do you bottle it up? Or do you actually go head on and address it? I think a lot of, ways that we deal with conflict possibly comes from our childhood or previous relationships. And what we expect to happen at the end of conflict. Do we expect it to end badly? Do we expect it to end with the person not speaking to us, cutting us out? Do you expect it to end with a hug, with a win-win situation? Or do you expect it to end with someone wins and someone loses? And what we're always working towards is that win-win, but also really thinking inside whether is it something I really care passionately about, or am I just digging my heels in and being blimmin' awkward?
Yeah, but the irony here is we're both, and I think this is fair to say about both of us, we're like people pleasers and always have been.
Yeah.
But of course, that's quite a derogatory term. But in fact, what we actually are is very empathetic, certainly towards each other. But it's, if you really worry too much about what other people think, that when you're not opening your mouth and really expressing, what your concerns are, that's an issue that you need to address. It really is.
And it's about having the courage to address it. And I think, changing a behaviour habit of maybe, withdrawing, takes courage.
Yeah.
And I think, a strategy we're going to show you, I think could, help give you that courage, and then you can practice it.
Although, as a funny aside, sometimes, particularly early part of our relationship, I would try to get physically get away from Karen, just to catch her breath and thing, and she wouldn't let me get away. She would say, "You talk."
And then I realised he needed the space, because I've got this thing about not letting people walk away, but I now know that Nick's one of those people that needs space. So you find out about your partner, you find out about your friends what they need. So people always say conflict's a problem, but it's not conflict that's the problem. It's how you actually deal with it that is the problem. And learning to, when there is an issue, contain that tension within yourself and not explode. I always liken it to that something very small could happen. It's like a bottle of Coke getting shaken. And then if that keeps happening, either, the lid explodes, or you just feel dreadful about yourself because you're not speaking up for yourself.
Yeah. I'm sure all this will be striking a chord with you.
Yeah.
We've all been there. We all know what that feels like.
Absolutely. So why is conflict so hard to deal with? I think a lot of people do find it hard. A lot of us are brought up to avoid conflict. It's a bad word. You don't want to argue. Just be quiet, particularly as children. So I think we've learned we need to speak up.
We've done this for years now, years and years and years. We've been together
12 years.
13.
Yeah.
And we learned this very early on, partly because of where we both were in our lives, and we were both sort of fighting our corner, and that's a good thing. So we've walked the walk for a long time here.
And I think that, often arguments may seem that they're very trivial. Perhaps someone's dropping socks in the bathroom
Oh,
and not
gosh.
put them in the bin, but actually it's digging down to look at what's the need that what is it, what's the feeling being brought up by that.
That's a really good point, because sometimes it's so embarrassing what maybe has triggered you. It could be something really minor and not a big deal, but of course it's probably not that thing. It's something else going on,
Absolutely.
which actually needs to be excavated in the conversation.
Yeah, it's the deeper need. Is it sort of a lack of respect? Is it feeling excluded? Yes, so I think a lot of these silly little arguments actually have got a greater need underneath. If someone's never putting the stuff in the dishwasher, actually that probably the need that's not addressing is that your need
I
for
would like to say
self-respect.
I
You
do put
He
that.
does. He does. But the need is that, every time someone leaves something on the side, it's not respecting your time or respecting you. So avoiding conflict is not the answer. If you want to really deepen your relationships with your friends and your partner. For one, it consumes energy. You're holding in all these feelings. And it's not going to create the warmth in the relationship and increase the love. So one way that we talk about it is by using I statements. And I statements are just starting with the word I. So, for example, I had a friend who would arrange to meet, and they were always late. They could be ridiculously late. And I bottled it up probably for about 5 years. And then one time I thought, actually, I'm going to use my technique that I now use with in school and with in training sessions. I'm going to try it on him. So when he arrived late, I said, I feel not respected when I'm kept waiting for ages. I need to feel that my time is as important as yours. And it actually had quite a huge effect. One, he listened up. He didn't come defensive, because I think previously when people had challenged him, they'd said, look, you're always late. You always do this. And he sort of just froze and then didn't actually listen to the other person's perspective. So it's a very simple technique. It's just saying, I feel when.
Yeah, and I think the other way of dealing with it is maybe say, rather than as an I statement, but also, what do you feel? And actually, you can reverse that question to actually encourage the other person to actually say what's wrong. And in fact, you do that with me actually very well.
It's a two-way thing. You want to find out what both sides think.
Yeah.
But one person who's feeling they're not having their needs met needs to probably speak up first. Or if you're confident with that, then you could, like sometimes with Nick, I might say, something's not right here. How are you feeling? What's happening? What needs not being met? And we can explore it and then sort it out.
And we always do.
Yeah.
And the only way you get to that is by having that conversation in the first place.
Yeah.
What's wrong? Don't pretend something's not happening. Actually, find out what's going on in your partner's head, your friend's head, your family, member of your family's head.
Yeah.
Don't let these things stew.
Because it's going to happen again if you don't express your needs and say, how you're feeling, what you need, and what you want to happen. They're not mind readers. They might be going through it perfectly happy, thinking you're absolutely fine with it. And then Sunday you'll either explode or you'll just want to walk because your needs aren't being met.
Mm.
So I would urge you to have a go with this technique. So conflict's neither good nor bad. It's just how you resolve it that makes it good or bad. And I think the one thing that we've learned is, one, acknowledging it, speaking up, using the I messages, certainly open up a discussion rather than blaming someone or exaggerating and say, you always do this, or this happens every time, because actually it probably doesn't happen every time. And the other good thing with I messages, they're very specific. You're talking about the last time someone did something. But ultimately, you've got to have the courage, I suppose, if the relationship is damaging for you and your needs aren't being met and you are raising your feelings and that person's not listening.
Very good point.
The courage to walk away.
Yeah, very good point.
And that's very hard too.
Yeah. I mean, not every relationship lasts, and sometimes people grow apart. All sorts of things can happen, and again, you have to be true to yourself as well. So sometimes maybe the conflict, there is no resolution to the conflict. Maybe you reach an impasse with your partner, friend, whoever, and maybe the best thing, if it is that toxic, is that you have a clean break. That can be a very good thing. It can be painful getting to that decision, but that is also just nature of life sometimes. So yeah, definitely.
So I'm wondering, how do you feel about conflict? Are you someone that addresses it or likes to shy away from it? And I'm wondering, have you used these iMessages, or do you have another strategy for dealing with conflict that would be useful to share? We'd love to hear your thoughts, and share any expertise on the vlog would be great.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I think we can probably wrap up there. So please don't go away and have an argument with somebody unless you really need to. And I think just arguments aren't always comfortable. They are something we do naturally shy away from, but maybe sometimes just be honest, get to the root of the problem, talk it through, and you will feel generally an awful lot better for it. So with that, I think we shall sign off. Take care, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.